Should you read David Irving's books? Can you trust what he wrote? I'm going to answer those questions for you today. Now, many of you have asked my thoughts on this, and so has my patron, Craig Heinrich. Craig read some of Irving's works, but then found out about Irving's career, and now says, I don't know if what he writes can be believed. Since many of you may not know the issue with Irving, let me tell you a quick story. Deborah Lipstadt wrote a book called Denying the Holocaust, in which she said that David Irving was a Holocaust denier. David Irving then sued her and her publisher for libel in what is known as the Irving vs. Penguin Books Limited trial. As part of their defense, Penguin Books called upon historian Richard Evans as an expert witness who had just written a brilliant book called In Defense of History. Evans examined Irving's works for 2 years, compiled a huge report on him, and successfully defended himself during cross-examination. Here is what Evans said of Irving. Irving has done all of these things from the very beginning of his career. Not one of his books, speeches, or articles, not one paragraph, not one sentence in any of them can be taken on trust as an accurate representation of his historical subject. All of them are completely worthless as history, because Irving cannot be trusted anywhere in any of them to give a reliable account of what he is talking or writing about. It may seem an absurd semantic dispute to deny the appellation of historian to someone who has written 24 books or more about historical subjects. But if we mean by historian someone who is concerned to discover the truth about the past and to give as accurate a representation of it as possible, then Irving is not a historian. Those in the know, indeed, are accustomed to avoid the term altogether when referring to him, and use some circumlocution such as historical writer instead. Irving is essentially an ideologue who uses history for his own political purposes. He is not primarily concerned with discovering and interpreting what happened in the past, he is concerned merely to give a selective and tendentious account of it in order to further his own ideological ends in the present. The true historian's primary concern, however, is with the past. That is why, in the end, Irving is not a historian. Irving lost his court case, and here's what I'm going to recommend to you. If you already have read Irving, or if you're tempted to, please get yourself a copy of this book and read it. This is Telling Lies About Hitler by Richard Evans. Brilliant book, and it will explain exactly why Irving cannot be trusted. There's plenty of evidence in here and examples of Irving actively distorting history, doing so to prove that Hitler knew nothing about the Holocaust and was actively trying to save the Jews. Yes, Irving claimed that probably the biggest friend the Jews had in the Third Reich, certainly when the war broke out, was Adolf Hitler. He was the one who was doing everything he could to prevent nasty things happening to them. Now that's a bold statement. So,
the Holocaust became the focus of a trial in London last month when the historian David Irving sued an American writer for libel and lost. Irving, who claimed that there were no systematic gassings of Jews in Auschwitz, was branded by the judge as an active Holocaust denier, anti-Semitic and racist, and an associate of right-wing extremists who promote Nazism. Why does he think he lost so badly? David Irving, welcome to the programme.
Yes, hello.
In the introduction to the new edition of Hitler's War, you quote what you call a scornful adage, and you say, "To historians is granted a talent that even the gods are denied to alter what has already happened." Was that you giving the game away and telling us exactly what you've been doing in history since 1988?
I'd add a category to that. Not only historians can do it, but apparently lawyers can also do it.
But you did it in this case, according to the judge, didn't you?
No, I don't agree, and I had to be careful what I say about in commenting on the trial because we're going to go to appeal on this. So I had to be careful not to try and second-guess the judge.
Well, the record of the judge already stands, what he said, doesn't
yes.
he? I mean, Irving has, for his own ideological reasons, persistently and deliberately misrepresented and manipulated historical evidence.
Yeah, this isn't the view of a lot of historians, but of course...
Well, it is the view of a lot of historians, isn't it?
A lot of historians, there's a consensus of historians who obviously don't like me, and I must admit that if I was invited to be an expert witness in this case, as several historians were, for the defence, and I'd been offered $100,000... For me to be standing here on trial for an opinion I expressed 16 years ago as a historian is ridiculous. And for Austria to try to pretend it's not a Nazi state in doing so is ridiculous also. Yeah. I think the law's an ass. I think within 12 months this law will have vanished from the Austrian statute book, and I'm going to be a last victim.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for both those gracious introductions and those very generous comments. You have, having heard that and having come out tonight, I feel some sense of this, but let me lay out the story of what happened from when I first received a letter from my publisher. It was a day not unlike today, a beautiful fall day at Emory University, and I received a letter from my publisher, Penguin UK, who had published the British edition of Denying the Holocaust, that David Irving was thinking of suing me for libel. And the reaction I had when I first received the letter was to laugh, because I thought this was totally ludicrous. Little did I know. It actually was ludicrous, but little did I know what would ensue. And the reason I laughed was that David Irving had a track record of very publicly denying the Holocaust. I'll give you just a few examples. The letter came to me in 1995, but in 1998 he had appeared as a witness on behalf of a Holocaust denier who was being sued by the Canadian government, a reverse of my situation. He was being sued by the Canadian government for his Holocaust denial, a man named Ernst Zundel. And Irving had appeared as a witness on his behalf, and during the trial, he had called the Holocaust a legend. David Irving was a man who, subsequent to that, when he published or republished one of his books, he had published a book in 1978 called Hitler's War, which was a biography, as Irving described it, the biography or the autobiography that Hitler never got to write. And it was the story of World War II from behind Hitler's desk, again, Irving's description. In the initial edition of the book that came out in 78, he argued, and this is going to sound ludicrous, but many respected historians took the book seriously, even though they discounted this portion, where he argued that Hitler didn't know about the Holocaust, and when he learned about it, he tried to stop it. And that Hitler was literally the best friend the Jews had in Germany.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. The Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution. He flew to Berlin. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them.